Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. I'd like to get a quick sound check and make sure that you can hear me before we begin. So if you can hear me, either say something in the chat box, or if you've got your audio on, just kind of say it sounds good.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Same here.
And then that being said, if you can look at your audio tab on the GoToMeeting control panel, if you put that on there, you will see that you're either muted or not muted. I'd encourage you and ask you if you could just go ahead and mute yourself. That way, if anybody's typing or saying something in the background, it won't be a distraction to others when we're doing the presentation. So thank you in advance for doing that. And by my clock, I've got 1:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And we got 28 people on, which I'm happy to see. And if anybody joins late, that's great. As a reminder, I am recording the session, and we will make it available on our fancy schmancy new YouTube channel that I established for AASC. And that way, if you want to refer back to anything that that Bryant talks about today, you'll be able to do so. And then also I'll send a message out to everybody else just in case there were a number of people that have a conflict just at this time, so they'll be able to access the training. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. We're going to begin with a couple of introductions. And just before I press on, you saw the slide change. You can see my slides, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, a couple of quick introductions, especially for those that were unable to attend our annual meeting in Nebraska this summer. Luigi Romolo, who's a state climatologist in Minnesota, is stepping on board as our new AASC treasurer for his term. So congratulations to Luigi, and thank him kindly for stepping into that role. Also, Melissa Griffin, who's now down in South Carolina at the State Climate Office. She is stepping into the brand new role that we have approved of AASC Associate Member at Large. You might have seen an announcement go out from Adnan for that earlier this month. So congratulations to her, and we'll follow up with more about that, but I think it's an exciting new position. And I wanted to pass regrets on behalf of Adnan. He contacted me this morning and has come down with some sort of infection and actually got checked into a hospital this morning. He said he's okay, but he passes his regrets that he's unable to attend this meeting. And I believe Hope is down in Charleston for some things with her job. So that's kind of where we're sitting at this point. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is some big news about the AASC annual meeting. It's going to take place the 24th of June is our registration pickup and icebreaker, and the 25th to the 28th of June is the actual meeting itself. The big news, of course, is that we're having a venue change for reasons that we just couldn't make the original venue work. And so our alternate venue was the Flamingo Resort in Santa Rosa, California, up near wine country. And so that's the venue that we are having to go to instead. I say having to, but I think it's going to be a great venue. And I've learned along the way, Santa Rosa is the home of Charles Schultz. So they've got a Snoopy museum. So I'm pretty excited. I'm sure you would be too. There will be more coming out for that, and we're hoping to get registration open before the changeover of the year so that people can start doing those things. But I wanted you to at least be able to see this update so that you could make your planning. Next thing we've got is big news, and it's should be new for a lot of you. We're going to have an AASC Mesonet Meetup in February. And this is for any representatives of AASC affiliated or other Mesonets. And the whole point of this is that we're going to have it as a working group to do some drafts on standards and guidelines for Mesonet operation, establishment, and sustainment, and that sort of thing. We're going to be doing it 27th and 28th of February in Nashville, Tennessee, right up by the airport. So we picked this location because it's easy for a bunch of Midwestern folks that have Mesonets to drive to, and it's also an easy place for people to fly into. We're going to be having it at the Radisson Airport Hotel, and they've actually got a shuttle. So if you need to fly in, you could actually fly into the airport, ride the shuttle over to the hotel, which is only about 3 miles away. It should be a really good meeting, and if you care about it, Mesonets and kind of want to toss your marker down, I think we're going to be doing some important work. I would encourage you to come if at all possible. So that being said, I'm going to have another message coming out about that before Thanksgiving so that you can see those type of things. We just contracted with Radisson, and I'm still awaiting the hotel discount. It will be within government per diem. And so more information on that to come up. I think this is my final announcement here, is that we're also going to do a AASC Meetup at the AMS annual meeting like we've been doing the last few years. That's in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to be doing that on the 8th of January. And I'm working with Nancy Sellover on the actual venue. But put a marker down if you're going to AMS. It's an informal gathering. We'll get some appetizers and pass them around like we've done in the years past. And it's just a chance for you to kind of filter out the AASCers and get a chance to meet up with people. AMS is a big meeting. This provides a fancy little time for us to come together, have a drink or an appetizer, and chat and catch up in person. So I hope you can make it if you're at AMS. Okay, so that being said, now it's time for our EV-2 instruction with Bryant Krasinski, and I am going to pass the baton over to him, so bear with me for a second while I do that. Okay. And so Bryant should have it. And then just for, you got it there, Bryant?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Let me pop that up there. I can see your screen. I think we're looking good. And if you just give me a quick moment, I think we'll be ready to go.
Okay. And you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, and just as a little quick introduction, Bryant is, of course, an associate member with AASC. He works at NCEI here in Asheville. He's one of the big data gurus for them, and also a contractor with ERT. And so Tammy Houston, our liaison to NCEI, is working with Bryant here to kind of help put this training on. And we want to thank you, Bryant. And with that being said, I'll just pass the baton over to you. And before I do, one more thing. If you didn't see my message at the top, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat box. And if you key it to his numbered slide, that might help it as we answer it. There will be a time, though, to open the microphones at the very end of the meeting as well to ask any questions that you might have. And so with that being said, take it away, and thanks, Bryant.
Okay, thank you, Glenn, and thank you, everyone. And just a note to Glenn, my backup audio via my cell phone, the phone call dropped. So in case my audio goes, we will make sure to get back on. So just a heads up on that.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah, no problem. So thank you, everyone, for joining in. And I see that we have state climate offices as well as National Weather Service forecast offices, the climate focal points. Some of those are on the call as well as some of my colleagues here at NCI that have joined the call, because this is a very interesting topic. A lot of people have asked about how they can use EV-2 to check their data, especially for stations that they are interested in. So I'm glad to be able to give this presentation today. And just a full disclosure, as Glenn said, I do work with ERT. I am a federal contractor with ERT as part of the mission support contract here at NCEI, and I do represent on behalf of NCEI at this particular webinar. So I just want to make sure I make that full disclosure there. And just to put a face to a name, I am this person here giving the thumbs up, and this is normally the other side of the screen when you send Datzilla tickets or emails to me, that this is where they are received, up on the 5th floor here at NCEI. So just to make sure you put a face to a name here. An overview of what I'm going to go over here today regarding EV-2. First question is, what is EV-2? Who can access EV-2? How you can access EV-2? And then I will provide some tips that for how to access data forms in EV-2. And then what you can access within on the website. And I will give you at least a few cabinets or libraries that you can access data forms from, the most commonly accessed libraries and cabinets. Also, how you can use EV-2 to verify data values. I'll give you some tips and pointers regarding that. And then at the end, I will talk about how you can coordinate with us at NCEI to get any forms into EV-2 that are not already there. So we've got quite a ground to cover in a short amount of time here. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And just a disclaimer, this is an overview from the clouds at EV-2, just a demo and not a lab session that I would normally teach if it's at the training center in Kansas City for the National Weather Service. Any in the weeds scenarios, so to speak, about specific stations related to accessing forms in EV-2, you can email them to me at my NOAA email address. And I will show this email address again towards the end of this presentation. So NCEI's mandate in a nutshell, it is to collect and preserve the nation's climate data record, and that's per the Federal Records Act of 1950 and by U.S. Code Title 44, Chapter 31 of the Records Management by Federal Agencies. So we have the mandate here that the data forms, that we make them accessible to you all. So you may be asking, what is EV-2? EV-2 stands for Environmental Document Access Display System. It's also referred to as EDADS version 2, especially if you're familiar with the previous versions of the system known as EDADS, the original version. Also, if you were familiar years ago with WIZARD, which stands for Web, Search, Store, Retrieve, and Display. Got it. And EV-2 stores and provides the scan and index forms. They were scanned by the legacy CDMP program, CDMP standing for the Climate Database Modernization Program. And we also still, on occasion, we receive some forms as incoming records that our basement archives folks make available, but those are definitely few and far between since we've transitioned to digital only submissions, at least for co-op and the other networks that we get data from. And EV-2 also fulfills the mandate that we collect and preserve the nation's climate data record. The question that I get on occasion is, who can have access to EV-2? So anyone with an email address that ends in NOAA.gov can have access. In addition, anyone with an email address that ends in .edu that is working on a project with a NOAA affiliated agency can request access. Also, anyone that is affiliated with a NOAA affiliated agency or university that isn't either a NOAA.gov or a .edu user, we can provide access to that, but it does have to go through verification with the affiliated agency and a special permission being granted after a review here at NCEI. And we rarely get those requests, but once in a while we do get them, and it does go through a review and a verification to ensure that the access to EV-2 is needed and is allowed. And additionally, if you're on this call and you do not have an EV-2 account, you can submit an email request to ev2.ncdc@noaa.gov and give it about 3 business days at a minimum. Your account login and password will be provided to you via email. And if you do not receive your credentials within 3 business days, you can follow up on the email request, and you can even CC me and just check on its status. But I would say give it about 3 business days for getting that request fulfilled. Also, if you have not used EV-2 in a good while and you need a password reset, you can use the same email address to request that the password be reset for you, and they will gladly do that. So how do we access EV-2? This is the web address, which we will look at here in just a moment. And this web address is in the presentation, which I believe you all will get either a link to it on Google Drive, or you'll get an actual copy of it. And just to show you some of the things that we will go over in this quick tutorial that I'll run through, we'll be looking at wildcard characters being used, the entry of dates, looking how you can search results once you enter your criteria and download forms from it, which you can do as PDFs, and then talk about placeholder co-op IDs for at least the co-op forms that are accessible from EV-2. So I'm going to get out of the presentation for a moment here and bring up EV-2 right quick. And I'm already logged in. When you first go to this page, there will, instead of it saying log out here, it will say log in, and you'll click it and you will enter your email address, which is your login, and then whatever password is set. If you log on to EV-2 for the first time, it's recommended to change your password the first time to something that you know. If you're in the habit, especially those of us that work within NOAA, where we change passwords every 60, 90 days, it's good practice to do that. So just keep that in mind. Once you log into EV-2 here on the screen, you will get this welcome page, and at the top, depending on which library that you've last looked at, the link to that will be available here. What you will want to look for if you're here for the first time to explore with an EV-2 is the libraries link. So I'm going to click that here. And of course, since I've been out of it for a while, and don't worry, my password will not show on the screen here. So I'm going to enter that in, making sure that I've remembered it. Okay. So you will see a list of libraries. If you're familiar in previous versions of the system, they've been called cabinets. So if I use cabinets or libraries during this talk, they're one of the same. So you have the ability to access different libraries in here, and there are quite a few of them here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Cooperative Observations Cabinet, which is one of the most commonly used libraries / cabinets in EV-2, to show you some of these tips. So I'm going to click the link for that library. And the screen that results is going to give you a list of criteria that you can enter. And beside each of the fields are question marks that you can click, and it will give you some pointers of how to do different searches for each of the fields. And it's dependent on the field itself. So you can get tips for how to enter dates, how to enter station names if you don't know them, using wildcard characters. Also, anything else regarding the entry into those particular fields. Just to show you some of the examples, just like the one that was shown, and you can see my drop-down box. I've done quite a few wildcard searches during my time in EV-2, and these are some of the ones that I've done. I'm going to do Asheville, which I've done in the past as well. So if you don't know the actual station name, or if you have a feeling that over the years the station name has changed, you can type the city name and then put an asterisk at the end of it, and it will look for anything that begins with Asheville, like, for example, Asheville Airport, Asheville, I'm going to say downtown, just as an example of the differences here. And it will bring up anything that has Asheville. You can put in the state, so you narrow it down just in case, for example, Greenville. There are quite a few Greenvilles around the country, so you want to narrow it down to a particular state. So in this case, I'm going to do North Carolina here. And for the dates, you see some of the wildcards that I've done here. You can do it by year. If you're looking for data for forms that are more recent, say 1966 through the present, you can do a greater than sign in front of the year. One that Melissa Griffin at the South Carolina State Climate Office alerted me to yesterday was that you can do You can do the backwards where you can do the 4-digit year dash 2-digit month. Thank you, Melissa, for that tip yesterday. You can do examples such as that. In this case, I'm going to do 2010 for this. Actually, I'm going to do 2008 for it. And then if you know the co-op ID, you can enter that in as well, but you have your other criteria that you can search for the forms within the cabinet. Some of the other features in EV-2, you can sort your results. You can do it by date, by station name, by co-op ID. If it's a city or location that has multiple stations in the same city or town, you can do those as well. I'm going to do sort results by date because that's normally the easiest for me to look at and to toggle from page to page. So I'm going to do that there. And you can also sort the results by ascending or descending, depending on what your preference is. So in this case, I'm gonna leave it at ascending, but you can change the radio button to do descending here as well. And at any time, if you want to change the number of results per page, you can do so. It goes up to 100 per page. If you want to reset your criteria and start fresh again, you can hit the reset button and it will reset your fields to blank so you can start over. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna click the search button, and hopefully everything is working fine and the forms can be accessed. And then the resulting page that follows shows all of your different results. And you can go from page to page looking at the results depending on the number of documents or forms that have been found, that have been located. Just to toggle through here. You can also, there's the ability that you have a cart folder on the upper right-hand corner of the page itself that you can add forms. So you can click the plus button and add them in. And you can deselect them. If you decide, oh, I do not want one of the forms, one or two of the forms, you can deselect them. And just to show you this right quick, I'm going to click the cart so you can see this. So all of the forms that you've selected that you've put in the cart are included in the cart area itself. And you have the option to download all of the forms as a zip file, which is definitely recommended if you want to do a batch download. Or you can empty the cart itself if you no longer want any of the forms in your cart. The recommendation here is that you don't try to put a lot of forms in the cart because it bogs down the system and accessing the database. So I would try to keep the number of forms that you download. I would probably say, to be on the safe side, probably less than 100. That I would say that would be the best practice here. Because EV-2 is not intended to be a mass download system. It's intended to search forms that you're looking for and maybe download a handful or two of forms there. But I would say keep it to less than 100 here. So, all right, I'm going to go back to the results screen here, which in this case I'm going to have to do the back button on this. So to look at the forms, each form has a magnifying glass icon to the left of them, so you can click one of the magnifying glasses to view a form. And the resulting screen that appears shows the form itself, shows the index on the left-hand side of the screen with all the pertinent information related to it. And you have the ability to hide the index so you can see the full form itself. And you also have the ability, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here, the viewer gives you the ability to look at the forms close up and pinpoint anything that you want to look at on the form. And then to bring the information back, you can, there was an icon here. Let me do this again. At the top or at the bottom, it'll say show document metadata. So you can click that link and it'll bring your index on the left-hand screen back up so you can view it. You also have the ability at the individual form itself to download it, which you can click the download button or add it to the cart. If you want to just download the specific form that you're looking at, you can click the download button and it will work like Windows Explorer where you can decide where to save it on your local drive for future access. And then at the bottom, depending on some of the forms, they sometimes have multiple indices linked to the same form, and if it's available, it will show up on your screen with a button or a link to do that. And keep in mind, this is some of the features that I'm showing here, like for example, the edit and the remove, that's only specific to administrators of EV-2, so you may not see some of the buttons on the screen here, like add index, edit, and remove. So keep that in mind, that you may not see some of these features here. Okay. All right, I've gone through 3 out of the 5 here, so let me go back to results and show you another neat feature of the results screen. So for the dates, if you decide you want to go descending instead of ascending, you can click the field header at the top, and it'll give you the option to sort in reverse or keep the sort as it is. So you can click the bottom one, and it will sort it in reverse order. And I'll go to the last page here of results. So you can do that there. And then another, one of the other tips that I'm going to mention here is co-op IDs. And I'm going back to the search screen here. You can bring up forms that do not have a co-op ID linked to them. Maybe the metadata, the station history forms didn't link the forms to a particular location or to a particular existing co-op ID. So the worst case scenario, you can do 6 7s for co-op ID, and you can enter additional criteria in here and just enter additional criteria so you narrow it down. But that's another tip here, is that if you cannot find the forms based on a co-op ID, you can utilize the 6 7s as a placeholder co-op ID. So, and I'll mention a little bit more about that one in some slides coming up. So, okay. All right, I'm going to go back to the presentation, and what I'm going to do now is show you some of the libraries that, can you see that? Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to show you some of the libraries here that are available in EV-2 that are going to be the most common ones that you're going to access to verify your data values. So the first one, we've just looked at it, it's the Cooperative Observations Library. It contains scans of the cooperative observation paper forms that are available on our IPS website that are indexed by co-op ID. As mentioned a while ago, the placeholder co-op ID is available as a search criteria in order to see if there are any forms that have no co-op ID indexed to them for a specific city or station. The one thing to note here is that none of the WeatherCoder 3 era data are available in this library, so you do have to go to the IPS website to look at those data on the dynamic generated forms that is available, and the web link is here on your screen here. And just an example of a co-op form, this is from Death Valley. Greenland Ranch is one of the stations that is for Death Valley. And just to show you that you can look up a co-op form, this happens to be the record maximum temperature there of 134 degrees. So a caveat about the co-op forms in EV-2, there are 4 states that are missing some co-op forms, as in they are not imaged and indexed. Those were the 4 remaining states, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and partially for Montana. They were not imaged or indexed during the legacy CDMP days. Those were the remaining ones when CDMP folded back in 2011. The general period in question for the missing forms, or the ones that are not available in EV-2, it's generally 1951 through 1980. And for these states, I have gone into our basement archives and looked at the microfiche or the microfilm or the paper forms to locate them. So we do make an effort to make sure that we have the forms on site. But sometimes it does require this, especially for these 4 particular states. Okay, another cabinet that may be useful to you, the preliminary monthly climatological summaries cabinet. Sometimes there may be paper copies of the F6s that have been submitted by the weather forecast offices in the National Weather Service back during the legacy CDMP days. Generally, the period of record that's available is mid-2000 through early 2011, which is when CDMP existed. These forms are not available on our IPS website. So it depends on the office, weather forecast office, whether these were submitted or not, but you can look in here. Sometimes I go to this cabinet if there's a request for F6s to try to find a copy of an F6. Sometimes I'll go here first if the weather forecast office doesn't have them available, just as a last resort check on that. And just to show you an example of accessing it from EV-2, this is one of the results for the form for the F6. Okay. This is another commonly used library, the Surface Weather Observation Forms, or 1001s. I refer to them as the Form 1001s. They're generally available from 1893 through 1948, and it's normally the city office and airport locations, the first order sites that they would be available for. And during the late 1930s and early 1940s, during the city office and airport transition, you can have monthly forms for both sites simultaneously. So that's another tip to keep in mind, especially when there was a transition from city office to airport. These are searchable by wayband number, which stands for Weather Bureau, Army, Navy, and it's a 5-digit number. And these forms are not available on our IPS website, so EV-2 is the way to go to access these. And to show you an example for Charlotte in July 1939, this is an example of a Form 1001 that has the summary of the day or the 24-hour observations. And this is the city office form. And within the same multi-page PDF, we also have the airport data. So the 2 sites observed simultaneously. So keep that in mind during that transition from city office to airport, which data values you're looking for between the 2. The next thing, our climatological data or CD publications are available. The monthly and annuals are available for 41 single states, as well as the 4 multi-states that are noted here on your screen. These are also available on our IPS website, but you can access them on in EV-2 as well in its respective library. An example, shout out New Jersey. This is the most recent CD publication available on IPS. And then FORTS forms. So these forms contain data that are mostly before December 1892, and it's before the Weather Bureau and the present day co-op era. These forms are not available on our IPS website, so EV-2 is also the way to go to access these forms. And to show you a couple of examples of these forms, this is a FORTS form. I believe this one is for Charleston, South Carolina, January 1845. Notice the handwriting. Melissa noted this yesterday when I showed this to her. Mount Washington, New Hampshire. This one is notable. If you see on the bottom, at the bottom of your screen, the -50 T-min is a state record for them. Also, the LCD publications, or local climatological data, the monthly and annual publications for the first order city and airport locations. These are available. 2 notes here. The monthly LCDs that have been worked by our ASOS point of contact, Blake Lasher, are not available from January 2018 through the present and into the future. Only the annual publications are going to be available here and on our IPS website. So you can go to the dynamic LCD product that's available on our CDO or Climate Data Online website to access data for those going forward. Also, another note, I noticed this when I was going through and putting this presentation together, that for the November 2015 through December 2017 data months, you do have to search by state and or the wayeband number for the specific station to access the LCDs for those. On our IPS website, they are indexed by the station and station name and state, and by the 4-digit year, 2-digit month. So it may be easier to go to our IPS website, access them. But just to make a mention here of what you're going to encounter in EV-2 when you access them. And this is an example of the last monthly LCD publication available. This shout out to the Arizona State Climate Office for Phoenix, showing the LCD publication for Phoenix here. And we also have daily forms, the surface weather observations. I call them the SWO daily forms because we have the Form 1001 set of the monthly forms, and these are the daily forms. And Glenn, are you now the presenter? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Jamie says that she can. Okay. I was just wondering if there was a tech glitch on our end. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm going to continue here. So the SWO daily forms, this library contains daily forms for the first order sites, mostly the airport locations, but there are other CAA locations before the MAPSO era and before the ASOS digital submission era that you can access. These forms are not available on our IPS website, so EV-2 is also the way to go for these particular forms. And just to show an example of one of the daily forms that you can access, this is for this, I think it's Providence, Rhode Island. Am I saying that right? This is a record maximum temperature on this particular form for that location. So just to show you where we would look for the summary of the day data would be here. Also looking at 6 hourly values also helps in the investigation when there's a data value that's in question or needs to be verified as accurate. Okay, and then the climate record books, or what's called the CRBs, if you hear me refer to them as that. They generally contain data from 1890 through 1970. The stations also are first order city office and airport locations. And these particular forms, I think of them as summaries rather than original forms. But when the original forms aren't available, this is a good resource to go to verify data values, especially pre-1950. And these forms are also not available on our IPS website, so you should access these in EV-2. And just to show you an example of a CRB form, I believe this form, if I'm correct, is from Topeka, Kansas. So a shout out to the Kansas State Climate Office. Okay. A question that I normally get in regards to the aforementioned forms is, what is the hierarchy for verifying data values using the forms in EV-2? So pretty much you can start from the top here, primary sources, the original observer forms for first order sites, the Form 1001s, the SWO daily forms, the FORTS forms, also F6s for the ASOS era, which are also referred to by the National Weather Service as CF6s. We normally try to focus on the original observer forms for verification of data values before anything else. For your cooperative stations or co-op stations, the original observer forms for those, so your co-op paper forms, like what was referred to as the B91s, the B92s, or the B83A, those forms we look at. Also, Weather Coder 3 data, post-admin closeout process by the National Weather Service weather forecast offices, which after that is completed, they're received as final by NCEI, by those of us here at NCEI. Again, those are not available on IPS, or should I say they're not available in EV-2, but they are available on our IPS website. So keep that one in mind here. And then we can utilize the secondary sources, the CRBs or climate record books, as I've just mentioned here. Also summary products such as our CD publications, our LCD publications, and also the dynamic LCD product that's available on our CDO website. And I like this, keep calm and cite your sources, which is very important when we're trying to verify data values. Where is your information coming from for a data value that's in question? So we utilize the original forms, and then we have our secondary sources here. Okay, I believe this is going to be the final item here. So the question is, how do you all get forms into EV-2 that aren't already available beyond the 4 states that we have on site that I mentioned earlier as not yet being available? So the first step is go into EV-2 into the libraries, verify that the forms indeed aren't available in the EV-2 cabinets. If you've confirmed that they aren't available, then contact me at NCEI. I will double verify that the forms in question indeed are not in EV-2. If you have a list of forms, make sure you provide a list of the station or stations and the period of record in question, because that's going to help narrow down where I search in EV-2 for you. And if the forms in question aren't available in EV-2, I do check with our basement archives manager here at NCEI to see if the forms are available either on microfiche, microfilm, or paper forms. And I have had to do that quite a few times recently. So I don't hesitate to go old school with technology. So we do get to utilize our basement archives. And I've had to, like I said, I've had to do that quite a few times recently for good reason here. So, and if the forms indeed are not available, what I would do on your behalf is coordinate the receipt of the forms. I would link you up with our basement archives manager here at NCEI to get the forms to us. If they're scanned, if they're already scanned and they're in PDF format, that definitely helps the process, because that's half the battle, is scanning the forms themselves. If the forms are not already available in PDF format, as time and available staff allow on our end, we can scan and image and index the forms into EV-2 in the respective cabinet. And it's important to note here that we do not have keying or imaging and indexing contractors, and this has been the case since the legacy CDMP program ended several years ago. So keep that in mind, that we do not have a dedicated staff that can scan thousands of forms. So there is going to be some wait time. There is going to be some manual effort that's going to be involved for both sides if there are forms that you want to get in EV-2. Okay, and questions that I get the most often: how to contact the EV-2 team. So this is a recap. Reporting any issues with accessing EV-2 itself. If you want to request account access if you do not already have an account, or getting a password reset if you're not able to do so, or if you're locked out of your account. Again, the email address is ev2.ncdc@noaa.gov. Any general questions about locating specific forms in EV-2, normally the folks on my end here at NCEI, they normally will forward the request to me, since I use EV-2 on a daily basis. Just email me at this email address, and I will be glad to help you figure out where the forms are located, and if not, see if I can find them in our basement archives. Alrighty, and now we're to our questions, and I'm going to go to the chat here, and I'm going to expand this, and I see some people have already submitted questions, so let me scroll down. Okay, so I have a question here from, don't know, the question from Phil Pastoris: is that an original form or process, since it appears to be typed? I'm assuming you're meaning the LCD publications or CD publications. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, it was Asheville. It's very likely, and I'm seeing your follow-up reply, Phil, there. You're saying it was Asheville. So let me go back, and excuse me for going quickly back through the slides here. It was part of the demo.
Yeah, Brian, that came up during the demo.
Okay.
I think it was just somebody with really great penmanship. And his question was, is that a post-processed form or is that a scan of the original handwritten form? It was the very first form you pulled up.
Okay, since my memory is very short now on that. If it was, let's see. Let's see if I can access it here. Okay. Give me a moment here, and let's see if I can duplicate this for you. Okay. Okay. I'm assuming this, okay, now I get what you're talking about here, Phil. Apparently this, because this one was generated here at the federal building, since this is our local observing station, I believe this is one that we've put together maybe via Microsoft Excel. We probably had a template of the B91. So I believe that's the case here. But generally speaking, if the forms are scanned and put into IPS, it's reflecting the condition of the form itself. So if it was typed, it's dependent on who put that form together. So hopefully that answers your question on that. Okay.
Brian,
All right,
you also had a question from John Nielsen Gammon at 1:45 p.m. there about forms.
Okay, let me go from the top. Let me go to the earliest questions, and then I'll get to John's question here. Okay, so I'm going to look at Doug Anderson's question. Are the OBS forms the only station forms in EV-2? It really depends on what specifically you're asking about that. In each of the cabinets, depending on the form type, there can be a different range of form types for them. I believe for example, the Climate Record Books library or cabinet, there are over 50 different form types. So, and also if you think for the co-op forms, there have been multiple different form types that have gone by different numbers over the years. So you will see a variation of the form types, but generally speaking, the types of data within each of the libraries is the same within them. So. All right, and I'm scrolling further here. Okay, and now I'm to John's question here. Sorry for the delay, John. So the question that you have is, during the presentation, I was trying to access forts data and completely failed. I started looking for Fort Leavenworth for 1843, then tried everything I could think of. Would you please demonstrate accessing a forts form? Sure, since I'm already in EV-2 now. And it may also be dependent on what's available in that cabinet for that station for that data year. So definitely keep that in mind there. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search here. Let's see. Let's see if this works. And I'm going to sort by beginning date for that particular cabinet. And that's an important thing to note, that each cabinet has different search criteria, just dependent on the forms that are available within it. So you may have some variations in the fields that you enter criteria into. So let's hope that this doesn't break it when I do a search. Here you go, John. Looks like we have some going back to 1827, and the beginning date and ending date is formatted by the 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit year. Generally speaking, 2-digit day. The 2-digit day is normally zeros for this particular cabinet, but I'm bringing these up here now. So let's look and see if we have any for 1843, which is what you were asking for. Yeah, here you go. Now let's just look at one of them, for example. And I'm going to zoom in just to show you. Yep. There you go. So I was able to find them here. Yeah. And another, and John, another tip that my colleague Shelley McNeil has mentioned in the chat is that you can search with station name where you have the wildcard characters, the asterisks, at the beginning and the end of the name. So like, for example, you can search for Leavenworth and put an asterisk at it before the L and after the H at the end. So a good tip from Shelley. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. Doug Anderson from National Weather Service in Columbia, South Carolina, asks if you all can have a copy of the slides. Yes, Glenn can speak to this, but I can make a link from Google Drive available that anyone here can access the slides. And if it happens to come back saying that you don't have permissions, I will definitely grant you permissions to do that. Just let me know via email. So. And Doug, you asked another follow-up question. We're really looking for station history such as station description. That is a good question. So for those of you, I would say at least for the Weather Service offices, I don't remember, Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong, for the state climate offices and the regional climate centers. At least for the National Weather Service forecast offices, you do have access to the Cooperative Station History Forms Library. And I'm going to show it to you here. And it's under the metadata portion of the library screen, and you would click the Cooperative Station History Forms. And you can search by co-op ID. I'm just going to show you an example. I'm just going to do Columbia. I'm sure Melissa will be happy as well for me to show this here. And if you know the co-op ID, you can enter that here. Since I don't, I'm just going to do a search by station name and state, and it'll bring up multiple stations here. I'm going to sort the results by date and ascending, and click the search button. Okay, and it brings up different search results here. And I'm just going to click on one of these. I'm going to go to the end since there's an important point that I want to bring here. For this particular cabinet, we do the forms, the station profile updates that your offices, this is for National Weather Service forecast offices, the station profile updates that get approved in CIS also get uploaded into this particular cabinet in EV-2 after they are approved. So I'm going to show an example of one here. And here you go. So we'll show all of your information here for that you can view. And I'm going to go back to the results so I can show you some of the more historical station history forms. So here's an example of one that covers from the late 1890s through the mid 1950s when this particular form was prepared. So you can access this information here. In addition, we have the digital versions of the information available on our Homer website as well. But you can definitely go back and look at your historical station history forms. Okay. Okay. I'm looking through other questions. Follow-up question from John about specifying a time period for forts. So for that one, I would generally just do the greater than or less than sign. If you're looking for forms that are before 1860, that would be the less than sign. If you're looking for forms after 1860, you can do the greater than sign in front of the date field. And I believe that cabinet was the 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. So. Okay, and a suggestion for my colleague Shelly, demoing the View Library button so that you can see what the library indices look like before you try to search. So let's do that here. Okay, I'm going to go into the Cooperative Observations cabinet. And at the bottom of your search criteria, there is a button that's labeled View Library. So I'm going to do that here. And it may take a moment or two here. Okay, while this is loading, John, the question about the time period, about the date format, send me an email of what specifically you're, okay, and you followed up saying less than 1845. That should work. Maybe if you try the 2-digit day as 00, maybe that'll work. Okay, and just to show you the results of the View Library result, it brings up all of the forms in the library, which I'm amazed that this one has brought up all of the forms here, because sometimes it times out, but it actually worked this time. So you can view all of the forms. I definitely do not recommend it, just for the fact that it most of the time it takes much longer, and especially if you go into cabinets like the SWO daily forms, which has much more than 9,900,000 forms. I definitely don't recommend doing this, but you do have the option to do this, especially if it's in a cabinet like this that has it's easier to access the forms from. So. And I'm going to try one more time for John. He wanted me to try to access the forms with the date criteria here. So I'm going to do that here right quick. So let's do this. Okay. So what I would recommend doing, John, I'm going to do this with the less than 1845. Okay. The Forts cabinet may be one of those cabinets where, because the format of the date isn't the standard date, that it may not be intuitive enough to figure out what's less than an 8-digit number. So I think for that one, you're going to have to go and use the station name and state fields for that, unfortunately. But for other cabinets like the co-op cabinet and such, that's where that particular criteria entry, the ones that you've put into the chat, those should work in those cabinets. I would say I probably wouldn't enter it as an 8-digit field. Depending on the cabinet, look at the format of the date for that particular library and try to mimic that. Worst case scenario, you can email me with additional questions about those particular searches. So, okay. I see no more questions on the chat. Are there any questions verbally to answer here? Okay, going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you all very much for having me on this call. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I can answer any questions that you have about EV-2, how to do specific searches, locating forms and such. And again, we will make this presentation, the PowerPoint slides, available to you either via Google Drive or some other mechanism. I'll coordinate with Glenn on that.
Hey, Bryant, can you put up your slide with your contact info one more time?
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. Here you go. And I'm going to expand that.
Perfect.
And I'm going to duplicate slideshow here. So there you go.
Okay. And we're right at the hour, but this is your perfect opportunity. If you want to unmute and ask a verbal question, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, please feel free to email Bryant, and he'll take your questions offline if it's something specific you just didn't want to do, in front of the entire crowd. And on behalf of all of our AASC folks that have dialed in, and also our National Weather Service partners that dialed in, I'm real happy to see so many of you on as well. Thank you guys for attending. On behalf of all of you, I want to thank you, Bryant. This is really a great rundown.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me, and this being my first time as an associate member of AASC to do anything related to the organization. So thank you for the opportunity.
That's great. And so that being said, and before too many more folks drop off, I wanted to correct one thing.
You want me to flip back to your presenting?
I think I'm doing it right now.
Good. Okay.
John Nielsen Gammon pointed something out. I had the date wrong for the AMS meetup. It's the 7th of January. It's that Monday, and we've got it set up to be immediately after the exhibit hall reception and that sort of stuff. So it's that day. It's not the date that would conflict with the university deals, their receptions. Okay, so that being said, I think I'm going to put up the final slide there. I know you guys need to drop off. It's got my contact info at the bottom of this, and I will work with Bryant to make the slides available, and I'm going to send out a email following this. You'll probably see it tomorrow with all of the links, including the link to the recording. If you want to see this again, you can go to the YouTube channel and take a look at that. And feel free to pass that on to somebody else that was unable to attend as well. And with that being said, thank everybody for attending. Thank you, Bryant, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.